Hello, everybody. Just waiting for our speakers to join us. Lucy is joining us, but she had some technical issues, so she's on her way, just restarting her computer. But hello and welcome. We've got a really great panel for you today. We're going to be digging into Performance Max and how you can avoid it being a situation of money down the drain and actually kind of make it work for you. For those who are kind of first timers at our webinars, on the right hand side, you'll see obviously the chat. There's a couple of tabs. There's one called Docs, which has a variety of resources that are relevant to the discussion today. And then the Q&A tab, which is where you can submit your questions for the Q&A session at the end of the panel. So the panel itself is brought to you by Lunio and Optio. You may have heard a few weeks ago we've announced that we've partnered, which we're really excited about. Both companies are working towards helping advertisers end wasted ad spend. Lunio from the perspective of tackling invalid traffic, and Optio through smart tools for optimizing your campaigns. So we're super excited to be working together. We've got a fabulous lineup of speakers for you today. So from Lunio, our VP of Partnerships, Chester, he's got a track record leading global performance marketing, very well versed in the highs and lows of PMax. Guillaume Devinat, he's the CEO and co-founder of Optio, specializing in marketing optimization software with a focus on how to use technology to improve marketing performance and efficiency. Lucy, who is currently backstage, but due to join us imminently. She is with us now, I believe. She's head of search at the global agency Incubator. She leads a team of 20 experts who use insights, experimentation, and cutting-edge strategies to help brands grow. And last but not least, we have Thomas Eccel, who is voted a top 50 PPC specialist worldwide. He brings a wealth of practical insights for maximizing campaign performance and is a constant kind of source of news and knowledge about the ad platforms. I think just today you dropped the update, Thomas, about the brand guidelines for PMax. So recommend following Thomas for sure. I'm just checking that Lucy's with us. Great. So without further ado, well, I should have actually shown you their lovely pictures, but here they are. They're all in front of me. And we'll kick off with our first question. So, what have you seen PMax deliver for businesses at its best? Do you know what, Guillaume, I'm going to point it your way. Oh, you're on mute, I think. So we'll steer it over to Lucy. Hey, Lucy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So I think like at a really basic level, where we've seen it deliver is just like growth and being able to drive that additional revenue for our clients. So I pulled some numbers from one of our clients where I know it's done really well for us. So year on year with bringing in PMax, like we managed to get like a 40% increase in revenue for a 16% increase in spend. I will caveat that's a PMax campaign where, you know, we have been really super shopping focused. So it hasn't been, you know, it's been like 97% shopping, and that's been through various testing, like assets, no assets, that kind of thing. But that's where we've seen it do really well. I think generally on these bigger retail clients where there's loads of data to put through it, you can experiment with lots of different assets. You've got lots of different audiences and things you can test out as well. We've seen it do really, really well. And then also within like really more specific client objectives. So things like new customer acquisition, for example, we've seen it do quite well with the features that it has there. So yeah, some tests that we've run there, you know, we've been able to increase the new customer participation of the overall like sales amount by like 25% just on PMax. So where there have been those like more specific asks and things, that's where we've seen it do really, really well. There are obviously, you know, points around like cannibalization, brand safety, all those kind of things, which I know we'll get to kind of later, but you know, you can't deny that when it works well, and it can drive that large growth.
Thomas, would love your perspective on this as well.
Yeah, thanks. I've seen PMax work in several locations, but obviously you really need to constrain it. You need to optimize it. You need to. It's like a small animal that you really have to domesticate, right? I always remember, like in the beginning when PMax was launched, like 3 years ago. I remember the first site on PMax was like, oh wow, there's so much, such a big ROAS. It works so well. All the traffic, all the conversions are coming in from PMax, and then we realized 80% is just branded traffic, and so we really had to kick out the branded traffic there. So suddenly we saw PMax is not that great in the beginning. So there, you needed to really find a way to optimize. Now Google gave us a lot of features back, right? So we have more control than we used to have when it came out. And I think the whole idea of PMax was like putting together a lot of channels from Google and sell the advertiser this ad spend, this media. And Google thought, okay, so I can have a lot of new advertisers who are not so skilled in Google Ads, because they just can pull a trigger and then the PMax runs. But that's not like it is right now. We really have to optimize the campaign. We really have to put a lot of time and effort inside PMax, just like we have to put in our search campaigns, for example. In search campaigns, you look for search terms, you look for any optimizations on ads, for example, on site links, whatever. And on PMax, you need to check your placements. You need to check also your search terms, since normally if you're a lead gen advertiser, 70% goes on search normally. So there are now a lot of ways to optimize PMax campaigns, and you really need to know where to find all those features, those hidden features, those optimizations that we're going to talk today in the webinar about. And once you as a PPC specialist know how to really steer PMax, it can really work well. I've seen now good results because I really put a lot of time into analyzing PMax campaigns with scripts. For example, I need to decode channels. I really use the insight stubs. I really want to dig inside auction insights, because now inside the insights, PMax gives us also a lot of competitor data that we can analyze. Right now, once you know how it works, then you can have really good results. But that's also a matter of time. So I won't say that if you launch now PMax today, that in 30 days you will have good results. No, it needs data, it needs time, it needs budget, there's like a lot of nerves that can go wrecked on PMax once it really starts kicking off. The good thing is we have all these tactics and optimization that we can pull. And if, for example, like since I work in agency, I have a lot of accounts, and I know sometimes PMax is not for each advertiser, right? So sometimes there are accounts where PMax is not really fitting. So also like the courage to say after 60, 90 days of testing, putting budget out there for PMax, it's also okay to say, okay, it's nothing for my business. Maybe it's a very hardcore B2B account where you have just a lot of scam leads, for example. Then it's also fine, right, to say, okay, let's go back to search, for example. That should be either way always parallelly running, especially for branded traffic. So it's obviously you really have to test it out for yourself, for your client, for your account, and then you see if it works or not.
Do you guys think that like? Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Do you have any examples of? We've got some interest in the audience specifically around PMax for lead gen and B2B. Do you have examples from the work that you've done of making success from that?
So for example, B2C on products that can be very well displayed have advantage. If you're, for example, a B2B industry company where you don't have really nice creatives, how to show the audience what you really sell, then it's harder also for PMax, right, to give you performance, to give you conversions. So more B2C site where you can really attract the audience, the customer, with nice visually appealing assets, that's always an advantage for PMax campaigns. And for like industry B2B clients, for example, that have like a very small industry piece that's not really interesting, that doesn't look fancy on an image, on a video, it's better you stay on search, because if somebody's searching for it, then you show just the search ad, and that's fine. Yeah. So, but obviously you need to test it. Yeah.
Guillaume, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I was just, do we kind of, like, it seems like constraints is really the key word to making PMax successful, right? And like some of those constraints are optimization, some of those are, but I feel like constraints are also sometimes inherent to the underlying business. So like, Lucy was talking about, like large SKUs, like a lot of SKUs, like very, very structured data in an e-commerce store. Or, I'm sure we're going to talk about, page feeds, for example, but that constraint, whether it be kind of layered on top with exclusions that we'll talk about later, but like, it's almost as if, certain businesses kind of are well suited to PMax by having that very structured data, right? And that's probably why, like in certain B2B instances, it's very unstructured, right? And that's like too much looseness for PMax to go wild on, right?
Yeah, and also I think PMax is like, the data you feed PMax is the output you get. So the more clear data you give a PMax campaign, like data can be page feeds, product feeds, images, search themes, audience signals, whatever, the better will the outcome be. So that's also very interesting. If you feed it with crap, you will get crap placements. If you don't constrain it, you will get crap placements. So it's always like what you feed the PMax, that's also what you get. Kind of like the human body, what you eat, you will become. Yeah.
I like that. We moved on to constraints. We did have a question beforehand queued up, and I feel like I kind of also want the audience to have a chance to answer this, because I feel like it might be quite cathartic. So how have you seen PMax go wrong? Question to the panel, but also to the audience.
Whilst we allow the audience to sort of chime in the chat, I can add kind of a few points from my side. I think, if we look at kind of some of the core limitations of Performance Max in general, it's ultimately that the solution has meant, whilst it's got some amazing things to it, and the guys have kind of just spoke about that, I think there's one key theme that's been kind of alluded to as we've kind of worked through that, which is that we've lost a certain amount of visibility, and we've lost a certain amount of control than what we had previously. We previously had, huge amounts of optimization capability and control elements in terms of what we could include. So what keywords would you select? What placements would you select? What geographies, what scripts to include, what scripts not to include, so on and so forth. And actually quite a lot of that's been taken away from Performance Max. And so the critical factor here is that in order for us to make the most out of it, we have to evolve the way that we think and evolve the way that we look at things to sort of capitalize the most. And if we don't do that, there are some huge risks from my perspective. And so one key risk that we probably don't talk about a huge amount is brand safety. And so by investing in Performance Max, you are, inherently investing in multiple different placement types, whether that be search, shopping, YouTube, display network, Google search partner networks. And that presents huge amounts of risk, similar risks than what you would have if you're investing in kind of programmatic advertising. The quality of the inventory that you're buying can also be a massive problem. And so if you're in that display network without actually maybe even realizing it, or without having the control elements that you would maybe have in other arenas, that presents some quite big concerns. And so there are real live examples of where this has gone horribly wrong for brands. If you look at kind of Talk, Mercedes-Benz, they've all had kind of front page sort of newspaper articles about kind of where that network has gone wrong for them, and sort of puts massive risk against their brand. if you then kind of look beyond kind of the brand safety element and sort of just look at the quality of the inventory that you're buying, that also presents a massive problem. There's this growing phenomenon that sort of has been described and written about by Analytics, about sort of made for advertising websites and ad clutter websites, which you are investing in if you're investing in PMax without kind of evolving the way that you think and sort of putting in place, as you said, around sort of these constraints. Because if you are investing in sort of poor quality inventory, ultimately all that's happening is you're diluting kind of your cost metrics, inflating maybe the impression volumes that you're delivering, but the actual quality of the inventory and the impact that that inventory is able to have kind of on your bottom line is really quite limited. And so that is a sort of massive limiting factor of Performance Max. And it doesn't have to be limiting, I think is the really key component. Is it's something that we need to be aware of and something that we need to proactively try to tackle. But it shouldn't be something that should scare us. And if we then sort of go into another area is around kind of this concept of having a sort of one size fits all approach, and sort of you kind of hear Google talk about kind of one campaign for your whole catalog, let the AI do the work. But as Thomas and the guys have kind of alluded to, there is still a huge amount of iteration and experimentation that is required within Performance Max. Do you segment your catalog out into different sort of product categories? They all have different kind of sales cycles. They all have different price points. And so they all have different audiences potentially. If you look at the beauty category, maybe as an example, a skincare product that's maybe sort of 10, 15 pounds for kind of mass market skincare, and sort of tools like hair dryers and straighteners, they're a completely different product, completely different sales cycle. And so, should they be treated the same? And does PMax AI, does the AI model have the sophistication to be able to give it the visibility that it needs in order to be able to convert, but convert at scale as well? And so I think the really important thing for me is that it's not a one size fits all approach. You need to continue to iterate and experiment and figure out what is right for your business. And if you get that right, PMax can be super, super powerful, but it is a risk if not sort of taken too carefully. So there are risks, and I've kind of talked about a couple of them there. One being kind of brand safety and kind of brand safety in its purest form. You've then got another around kind of the quality of the inventory you're buying and the wastage that's present within that inventory set. And then you've kind of got this concept of a one size fits all approach, which the reality is that that's just not true. And so as a collective, as an industry, we have to evolve our thinking in order to be able to maximize the opportunity that a solution like PMax has to offer.
Guillaume, do you have anything to add on this? You started talking about constraints. I feel like there's more from you.
Yeah, I think on when we get into like the pragmatic like tactics of exactly what to do, where to go, I think that's where my mind's at. I think Chester did a really good job of like the overarching themes around like loss of control, loss of visibility, one size fits all, let Google do it all. I think that's, if we're talking about the kind of overarching themes, I think he's covered it all.
One thing that I'd like to touch on, Thomas, when we've spoken previously, you've mentioned some of the kind of hidden features that are automatically on. I feel like that might be a common pitfalls that advertisers might find themselves in.
Yes, exactly. And that's also where a lot of advertisers who are not 100% inside the Google Ads PMax knowledge can waste a lot of spend. So like right now, it's like Google Ads has been like a little game. Like we have to really find hidden features in order to switch them off. Because right now, when you create a new PMax campaign, there are a lot of features switched on, and those features can bring a lot of money to Google, and not necessarily to you as an advertiser. Like always, you have to test. I'm not saying that everything is bad, but you really need to know what kind of features are switched on, because those features can really change the PMax campaign and also the spend. So right now, for example, a really nasty one is like location options. So when you create a new PMax campaign inside the Google Ads interface, and then you select, for example, location Italy to target, then there is no option for you to click interest or like location interest or just location. So also, as we all know, the location options, they can make a big difference. So for example, if you have a location just set to Italy, then you will just target people in Italy. But if you have location interest set on, that means if somebody is in Germany and looks for your product and then adds also Italy, for example, it will show even in Germany. And this can be a big problem for a lot of advertisers. And this option is not visible anymore in Google Ads UI when you create a PMax campaign. This can only be changed afterwards once the PMax campaign is set up. This is inside the interface and not when you create it in the Google Ads editor. Then you are fine because there the option is still there. But let's say maybe 50% use the Google Ads interface when creating a PMax campaign. So all those people don't know about this little option if they have not enough knowledge. So they will just run the PMax campaign with interest targeting too. So there can be a lot of waste, and you will see. And then if you go to GA4 or any other analytics tool and check where your PMax campaign spent, in which countries, in which cities, you will see that maybe 20-30% is outside of your really targeting location that you really wanted to. So that's a really big setting that can make a lot of waste in spend. So that's better to check it out. Then secondly, obviously, PMax has final URL expansion text assets that are now called customization are switched on by default. So for example, if you just want to push certain services or certain products and you have final URL expansion on, then that's a spend waster because you will give Google the option to access to all your URL content on the website and not just on the services that you or your product that you put in your asset groups. So if you really want to push certain services or product, you have to switch off final URL expansion. Another thing, if you have PMax feed-only campaigns, what I've seen in recent audits is people call them feed-only campaigns. They create it, are happy, but then they have final URL expansion on or even text assets on. What happens? Your feed-only campaign is automatically a DSA campaign, a search DSA campaign. Why? Because even you can call it PMax feed only and just give it the product feed. If you allow Google URL expansion and asset generation, then Google will also start spending on the search channels. So suddenly your PMax feed only is also a DSA campaign. And then once you see suddenly this search ads live on your PMax feed only, and you even see some site links or callouts that are not really nice, then you know that you also have your automated assets, the dynamic assets on your account level. So this is also a little setting that can go inside the PMax campaign and create there for you a lot of new assets that will be shown next to your DSA campaign when you have these settings on. So yeah, there are a lot of hidden settings that can make a big mess. And also they can also combined create a big mess. It's not just one, but if you have them all on, then as you can see, like even the whole strategy will not make sense anymore for you. The same goes obviously that now we, like Google said, that we will have soon campaign level negatives for our PMax campaigns. Before we used like account level negatives. We used the modification request form. We used Google Ads support in order to get our negatives, but Google, we said we will have campaign negatives. So also here, if you don't control your negatives, just like in search campaigns, you will also have obviously a waste in spend. And the same goes for your placements. We all know, I think, suddenly our PMax campaigns one day to another has like a huge spike in conversions. And those conversions might be obviously bot conversions. So I think we all know this little spike there, that can happen. And the first thing you need to do is go to your placements and try to see where it came from, and then obviously you need to exclude and not just one placement, but you need to get placement exclusion lists. You need to work on your inventory. Maybe you can even set your inventory to limited on account level in order to get in order to reduce this wasted ad spend. And yeah, that can really help then to get the campaign better up and running.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. I've found over the years that anything that's called smart, anything that's called enhanced, anything that has a recommended label next to it, anything that's expanded, there's a whole bunch of words where you know when it's on by default, it's worth taking a deeper look. I think for me, the search terms has been like really interesting. Like Google really doesn't make it easy to like access the PMax search terms and to analyze them. And they've also chosen to accidentally leave out cost as a metric against search terms, which is interesting. But like from what I'm seeing and the conversations I'm having, there's still so much opportunity in kind of doing an n-gram analysis for PMax search terms and using, like looking at results like conversions and revenue or conversion value and comparing that with like impressions instead of cost and doing your analysis that way and flagging, potential negatives. I think that a lot of people know it's possible, but I feel like it's actually doing it always yields cost savings. And then I think we also get into like, for sure, the locations of interest stuff is a great one. And then there's also like individual locations, right? It's like pulling up the geo report and finding like, do you really need to target all of the United States of America? Like, probably not. Like, there's going to be efficiencies and there's going to be constraints where you can cage the PMax animal, as Thomas so elegantly put.
I think that's a really good point. I think even if you have locations that are enabled, because let's say if you're an e-commerce business, because you can ship to that country, you can fulfill to that country, you're operating a global website, doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right thing to do either. It might do from a revenue sort of GMV perspective, but actually 9 times out of 10, distribution costs in those countries could potentially be higher. And actually the profitability at an EBITDA margin can also be really quite small. And so, the revenue gain versus the profitability gain are potentially two completely different things anyway. And so for me, that potentially in some scenarios de-risks removing some of the locations that you can actually ship to. So I think it's always important to not only just look at the revenue line when you're making some of these optimizations decisions, and actually looking at kind of the profitability line as well and saying, actually, yes, we would like to have this and we ship there, but actually when we look at it at a deeper P&L level, it doesn't actually make sense for us to do that. And so it completely de-risks removing some of those locations. So I think it's a really good kind of tip, and would advise kind of everybody to always look at kind of both revenue, but also the profitability kind of markers when you're making some of these optimization decisions as well. And Danny, I can see kind of in the comments, people are just talking at kind of asking around kind of block lists and placement block lists and so on. At this point, I will just point out that Lunio does actually have a domain level block list for kind of junk placements that we've generated. So there's currently 100,000 domains that you can access via Lunio to exclude them from your PMax activity. So uploading into the content suitability settings of your PMax accounts. I would advise that everybody goes through that list and kind of sense check, are you comfortable in removing some of those domains? Because there are some quite large domains that will be in there. And I'll use the Daily Mail as an example. So the Daily Mail from our side has been marked as a spammy domain for a number of different reasons. One of them is that the amount of ad clutter within kind of that placement is extremely high, and therefore the effectiveness of the placement that you're potentially buying is being diminished. But we also totally appreciate that for some advertisers, it is also a massive volume driver. So if we were to share and if we do share that block list, I think someone's just put it in the chat there, then please do go through it, sense check it, make sure that you're happy with excluding some of those domains in there. From our side, it does make complete sense, because the reality is that, conversion values amongst those domains are are extremely low, and if not, kind of made for advertising, which is another kind of topic. For those that aren't actually familiar with made for advertising, it's essentially a website that has been specifically built for what's referred to in the industry as ad arbitrage. And so purely being built for commercial gain. These websites have no real content. They have no real user kind of purpose other than to take advertiser money. And so it's definitely something that if you guys are interested in that area, particularly within the display network, I'd encourage everyone to go and have a read up about made for advertising on a broader level. A couple of places that you can potentially do that. One is Adalytics. So go and take a look at Adalytics. They've published quite a lot of articles around made for advertising and ad clutter specifically. And then the second place that some of you might be interested in is looking at the IAB website. On the IAB website, they have a full guide kind of on what made for advertising is, and equally how you can potentially try to mitigate some of that risk of made for advertising as well. So I'd encourage you to go and look at both of those resources on that specifically.
Nice. On a tactical level, there's also a way to exclude all mobile apps. And there's also, like, I think another easy cut is all the like kids YouTube channels, right? Like that's another, like, I think preemptive negatives is also just interesting, right? Like building up your like starter pack of negative exclusions the moment you hit the ground running. You don't need to like retest everything and see if every location works, right? Just given your budget, just like preloading it with constraints.
Yeah, and also like when we talk about like some operational things you can do in order to get less like bot leads or whatever, is like you can obviously steer your PMax campaigns to have like a slightly higher ROAS, target ROAS than you should have. For example, if let's say the ideal campaign for you runs at 300 ROAS, target ROAS, if you have it on 310, you already like constrain out a bit this higher target ROAS in order to make the campaign perform a bit better and not lose itself inside any like wasted ad traffic. That's one part. The second is, for example, if you train the PMax campaign or like your conversion action on conversion values, for example, you give your hard conversions a higher value than your micro conversions. That's something you should obviously do since like already. That's also like one big thing that you can do in order to drive better leads and also to drive better conversions. Why? Because PMax will know what is your preferred conversion action, the one with the higher value. That's something the system learns. And if you have, for example, a target ROAS bidding, let's say that's a lead gen account, you can still have target ROAS, right? That's called value-based bidding 2.0, and it works fine. Then you can really drive your PMax campaign a bit towards more conversions. You have like a bit more, let's say aggressive targeting there, and you can use that next to all your placement exclusions that you have and all your optimization work that you do on a daily or weekly basis, depending on the size. And that's how you can really train a bit more the PMax campaign towards better leads. Then obviously you can use offline conversion for lead gen, for example, which is quite a nice thing. If you use HubSpot, for example, then you can send back the conversions. For example, if a lead changes lifecycle stage inside your HubSpot, goes until client. So let's say it's first a lead, qualified lead, and then it's a client. And once it reaches that client life cycle, you send the data back to your Google Ads with a very high value. So that means Google Ads will really understand that the first touch point with that specific keyword led to a client lead that you offline imported to your Google Ads account. And so that's like the double value for your Google Ads, and that's also something that how you can train a bit more your PMax campaign. And that works also quite fine. I don't know, tell me in the chat how many of you are using offline conversions already. But you should definitely try it out.
The answer will be Lucy, more of you should, right? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
I think there's also like suppressing conversions is quite interesting, right? Just like not, if you're getting spammy leads, just like make sure they don't find their way back into like rewarding the algorithm, right? By having either a review layer or a lead rating layer, or using VBV or something like that.
I'm a little bit conscious of time, so I'm just going to interrupt you there. Lucy, I'd love your take on this final question around maximizing success and any insights that you can add before we move on to taking some questions from the audience.
Yeah, I think for us, the biggest kind of point of opportunity we found is going back to that point around you're only going to get out what you put in, and it's all about providing Google with the data points that it needs to succeed, essentially. So a big one for us has been like, you know, how do we tell Google which products to prioritize, for example? You know, how do we tell it who to go after? How do we tell it what search themes to use? So the product one for us has been the big one that we've been working on recently. And, you know, we're working on building that from more of a like manual, these are our criteria, this is the weighting, this is where this product goes, and, you know, building that into a fully automated AI solution. But even like just with, you know, we're looking at, is this product seasonal? Is the PDP good quality? You know, is it good margin for us? So we want to push it, you know, just combining those different attributes to say, these are the products we want to push the most versus these ones we don't, you know, it's a nice to have if we get traffic for them, but it's not a priority and that's not where the budget is being focused. That's been a really like big success for us, and we've seen, you know, like 30% lifts in conversion rate just from doing that. And, you know, there's various ways you can do it. I know lots of people will have like a bestsellers campaign, they might have like a zombie SKUs campaign, but it's taking it that kind of like step further to factor in these multiple different kind of attributes for each product, and actually telling Google, actually, these are the ones we want to go for, that will allow us to achieve our business goals and not you to just make as much revenue as you can, kind of thing. So that's been really important for us. And then the second one, I guess, is around that cannibalization point and making sure that actually what PMax is driving is incremental. So we've done a lot of testing around, you know, whether we exclude brand completely, whether we, you know, take brand out of our PMax campaigns, but have a standard shopping campaign, you know, all these different iterations and setups for that brand coverage. And what we've kind of decided on as our best practice approach is having our sort of standard setup, and then having like one campaign that's kind of like a catch-all campaign where you do allow kind of brand terms to come in, but it's only like it's only going to show brand on shopping, and you're not picking up brand through any normal PMax. So that's kind of like what we've done in terms of that incrementality point. We have seen sometimes when we turn PMax on for clients that are less retail focused, that's where we're seeing more of the search cannibalization. And what we've seen, interestingly, is if you take the search themes out, that can actually improve the cannibalization, because if you've put the search themes based on your keywords, then you're telling the PMax to go after like the same keywords. So actually, if you take those search themes back out again, sometimes that can work quite well in terms of it finding new things that aren't necessarily covered by your keywords. And I think the final thing for us is just increasing the level of insight that we have. So we all know it's an eternal bugbear of like actually getting visibility on what's going on. So things like scripts that will give us, you know, how much is actually going on brand, how much is going on video, how much is going on search, those kinds of scripts, which I'm sure everyone's kind of aware of. And also, you know, working with Google to actually get more insight. So I don't know if people are aware of some of the more recent kind of like dashboards and things that they've brought out support for. So P Maximizer being one of them, where, you know, we can actually deep dive into campaigns. What's our sort of like quality score, what are we missing, what assets are performing well, what assets aren't performing well, and that just makes it a lot easier for us to make decisions at scale across multiple campaigns, or across, we can start looking at trends across clients as well. So definitely like improving the insights and improving the testing, and at the end of the day it all comes back to that testing point, so just making sure that we are constantly testing. And I think, it's limited, right, in terms of how much support there is in platform for like A/B testing, things like that. So we're just constantly looking into like new methodologies. So, doing more, for example, like causal impact tests, and doing those. We've started doing them with Google. Now we're working on our own way to do it. So it's not like Google necessarily marking their own homework, but it's actually us sort of taking that sort of causal impact methodology, but having our own way to do it. So we're not relying on Google telling us what the answers are, but getting that testing data, getting that insight, getting as much as we can, so that we can make decisions based off of what we're seeing, and not just what we're being told or what is like best practice generally, but actually based on the data that we're seeing for our clients.
Awesome. Thank you. Some really great ideas in there for the audience. I want to shift now to taking some of their questions. So George has asked, with PMax and search often targeting similar keywords and audiences, how do you determine an optimal budget split to minimize cannibalization and maximize performance across both channels? Thomas, I feel like you might be a good place to start with this one.
Yeah, so obviously there is no rate of cannibalization you can really see out of Google Ads, but like what I always say, PMax is kind of like a trade-off, right? So you have with your client or yourself, you have a target ROAS set of goals that you want to achieve, right? In the next 30 days, in the next year, or whatever. So what I always do is when I have search and PMax campaigns running, I check, obviously, let's say PMax is always for me non-branded, because I always split it up. That's just because of CPCs. I know that CPCs are very cheap, so I never have it inside my PMax campaign, because PMax runs on target ROAS for me normally. So target ROAS gives Google a way higher range of CPC. And if I have my brand search campaigns parallelly running with a nice old school manual CPC or max clicks with a cap, then I'm safe, and I know that my clicks will not be higher than 10 cents, for example. So set that. If I have my non-brand search campaign with my non-brand PMax running on the same site, and I know, okay, there is some cannibalization effect going on, I try to see which of the two campaigns at the end performs better in terms of target ROAS. If it is it incremental, I have to check in GA4, obviously. If I just don't make up the numbers, like Google does not make up the numbers. And then at the end, I try to shift budgets towards a campaign that is performing for me better. I know, obviously, PMax can have a lot of problems, for example, crappy placements. But at the end, if the target ROAS after 30 days is higher than my search campaign, I know that the algorithm, the AI algorithm is working fine for my client. And why should I then cut on budget, even if I know that, okay, there might be some crappy placements, but at the end, the search campaign is working less great than the PMax campaign. So what I do normally is I shift up to 20% of budgets inside in between campaigns. Why up to 20%? Because up to 20% is always the limit to a new internally learning phase that will be triggered, even if on target ROAS or target CPA changes. The 20% is always the sweet spot. And then, I try to shift, for example, the first time more towards PMax if it works better. Then after 7 days, I already check the performance again. I see how the traffic on GA4 is changing, because sometimes clicks on PMax are not really users on the website. So I need to first obviously see if there is really a cannibalization or not, and if my clicks are really adding up with my GA4 users or sessions on the website. And then slowly, I need to, I can see if I have an incremental uplift or not. when I shift more towards the campaign that is working better, and vice versa. Obviously, if the PMax is working less, then I shift budget towards my search campaign. I also sometimes, if I see the cannibalization is too high, or like if I feel a cannibalization is too high, I eliminate search themes, because search themes, as Lucy already said, they are normally driving cannibalization, because that's kind of like a phrase match, broad match keyword that you give Google Ads. So once you like, search themes should be only used, for example, if you want to push a new product or a new service, in order to make the algorithm learn faster in the beginning. So you can kick them out, and then you already have like a less cannibalization effect there. And obviously, if there are some best performing keywords you know already from your search campaign that always have performed, then you should, why not creating them, like creating a new search campaign out of them for best performing, and put them as exact match keywords. Why? Because exact match keyword will keep the prioritization against PMax, and then you're sure that all those best performing keywords will always stay on the search side and not enter your PMax campaign. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of strategies you can use, but that's normally what I do, more or less.
Thank you. And next question. Lucy, do you believe that money needs to be spent in PMax before it can perform well? Or is it truly crap in, crap out? Asks Kyle.
So do I think money needs to be spent in it before it will work? Is that the question?
That's the question, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to a certain degree, yes, because you've got to get some data in there for the algorithm to learn from. You know, there is a ramping up period, and you can't expect it to just immediately hit your ROAS goals. There are obviously things you can do to try and speed that up, and I think that does, you know, speak to some of the extra data points that you give it around audiences, like we were saying, around the search themes, if you know, if that is something that you want to use for it to learn quicker. But I think it's about setting boundaries within that, right? You know, you're giving it 30, 60 days, depending on your, you know, how much data is running through it. You're not going to see results, you know, in a week, but you should be seeing results after a month, 2 months kind of thing. You might still not be at optimum levels after that point, but, you know, you should be getting into a bit more consistency around what you're seeing. You should be then getting enough data in that you can start, you know, making exclusions for things that aren't efficient, placements, locations, negatives, like those kinds of things. That should sort of give you enough data to start making those decisions as well. So yeah, you do have to put some money into it without, it's not just going to work from day one. But that's, you know, that's what the testing and the iterations of various different things are about.
Awesome, thank you. Appreciate we've run over a bit, but I'm going to take one final question because it's also had quite a few upvotes. So, how do you recommend to optimize search, display, YouTube, demand gen campaigns to run alongside PMax? I'll leave that as an open to whoever would like to take it.
I'm happy. I'm happy. Sorry, go on, Lucy. You go for it.
I was just going to say, it's an interesting one, like, because we often ask that to Google, right, in terms of how much overlap is there between our PMax campaigns and our demand gen campaigns, for example. And if you ask Google, you know, it's very much like there's different audiences that it's looking at. Obviously, like with demand gen, you can be a lot more prescriptive about what it's actually targeting. So I would focus sort of that on, like, these are the specific audiences we want to go after. Whereas PMax is kind of more finding people outside of that, you know, have shown that intent, that don't necessarily fall into a specific persona that you are going after. I think there's always going to be a little bit of an overlap. There's like an analysis and test you can run, I think it's called a Titan analysis, that will look at that sort of thing in terms of, like, actually how much overlap are you seeing within your audiences. But I think, like, I would say use the channels where you can do that specific audience targeting to have that persona based, this is the creative we want to show to these people, this is the creative we want to show to these people kind of approach. And then your PMax is more bottom of the funnel. This is a ROAS we want to achieve. We don't really care who it comes from. but we want to have as much kind of reach as possible. If that makes sense. I don't know if the other guys agree.
Yeah, I would agree, Lucy. I think that fundamentally for me, it probably comes down to ultimately what's the size of the team and what resource do you have available to you? And then the second part being, what is your ultimate goal with the activity that you're running? Because I think the one I kind of said right at the start, which is that we don't have a one size fits all approach. And the reality is that PMax isn't a replacement for your full media mix that you should be investing in. I think a diversified media mix is what's going to allow you to achieve the best or the greatest marketing effectiveness over kind of having this one singular campaign. And so I think that if you have the time, you have the resource, you have the capability to be able to have multiple different campaign types, multiple different sort of setups, best practices, goals, etc., to have a full funnel, a genuine full funnel approach, then you should absolutely be breaking these things out. For me, in an ideal world, Performance Max is a means of being able to leverage an AI first solution to drive growth within performance, and potentially exploring adding in additional inventory types to see if it can drive incremental contribution to your standard shopping activity. But it isn't a replacement for a reach-based campaign that's going to drive awareness and increase market share over time. That's not what it's there for me. So if you have the time and resource, I would absolutely say that you should be looking to use Performance Max as a performance driver and leveraging the different inventory types that you have to see if there's any incremental contribution, and then leveraging kind of your YouTubes, your display networks, your DV360s, your metas, etc., as well as all of the above the line activity. If you're running above the line activity to drive brand, PMax is not a replacement for that from my perspective. So I think that we need to be extremely cautious around using PMax as a replacement for your full media mix.
Thank you so much. I'm hoping there might be still appetite to cling on a little bit longer. There's another question that creeped up in the upvotes. I'm hoping we can squeeze in. How would you recommend running a standard shopping and Performance Max campaign alongside each other? So this relates to that other question, but I think given the recent changes, Thomas, maybe you can take this one.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. So before the update, standard shopping was obviously running as a fallback campaign, right? Because the prioritization were for PMax campaign. And only if the PMax campaign ran out of budget and there was still demand on your product, then the standard shopping campaign will pick it up and run as a fallback. So right now, this prioritization from PMax over standard shopping has been eliminated completely. Unofficially, it's from 1st October. Officially, it's last week, but Jeannie from Google already said that it has been going on for some weeks. Honestly, I've already saw that my standard shopping campaigns were growing from the 1st October on, but I didn't know why. Now I know why. How should they be set up now? So right now there is there's a strategic question, because if you now set up PMax and standard shopping, it's not so great, right? Because what you do is you split up your daily budget, and that's not like how modern shopping should be done in Google Ads right now. The best, obviously, if you know already that you will run on target ROAS, why not having a PMax feed only? And you have the double amount of daily budget for the PMax, since it's an AI a smart bidding algorithm behind that. You should be fine. If you are more keen on lower click cost, because you know that in the past your shopping campaigns had a lower click cost, then you can go 100% on standard shopping with a manual CPC. That works just fine for now, and forget about PMax feed only. So you just run on standard shopping. What I right now don't recommend is split up the whole daily budget just for the sake to have standard shopping and PMax feed only running on the same site, because right now that's not really that's not intelligent, because what you need to do is try to make the best out of the daily budget for one campaign. That's how the algorithm is made in Google Ads right now. Before, I always had standard shopping as fallbacks, but since now, for example, the update has been done. I try to focus now on one campaign type and have the whole daily budget there. But also here, you never know. You have to test. Every client is different, but yeah, it's always good to have heard it maybe. How other people set it up, and then you can get inspired by that and try it for yourself. But I think right now there's no correct or wrong, since not even Google knows what this update is really making behind the scenes for us advertisers. What I've seen, for example, is that I had fallback standard shopping campaigns that have normally a higher daily budget than they spent, because before all the spend went to PMax, and then the demand was not enough for the standard shopping to spend its whole daily budget. So right now, what's happening, if you also have those fallbacks running, Google will suddenly spend all your daily budget on your standard shopping campaigns. So you will have an increase of cost for standard shopping. So you have to check them right away in your accounts if you have that, and circle back on the budget, put it down, or make yourself an idea now what kind of strategy you want to run for the future. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we need to wrap it there. So just a huge thank you to all of our panelists. It's been super insightful, I'm sure. I mean, the chat's been popping off, so lots of value there for the audience. Thank you to our audience for joining us. For the questions that we didn't get round to, we will get back to you by email with responses. Thank you so much for joining us, and see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
See you, everyone.